Welcome to the Chasing Your Dreams podcast, a place for you to find the wisdom and powerful strategies for overcoming obstacles and making your dreams come true. Here is your host, Eric Hall.
All right, welcome back to the Chasing Your Dreams podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hall. Please like, comment, subscribe, anything you can do to really help the channel grow. Today, man, is a huge one. Right here on Black History Month, I'm blessed and it's an honor and privilege to introduce, the world for those who don't know him. And I'm kind of getting to know him even myself today, Mr. Blaise Labbe, just so I don't mispronounce his name, who is the regional news director for Sinclair Broadcasting Group, and definitely the first African-American news director in Oklahoma and Kansas City. And also, man, more recently, an author of a book, definitely The Blessings of Forgiveness, A Healing Journey of Blaise Labbe. let me let you introduce yourself today, man. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I truly appreciate it. It's ironic. I didn't even put the whole Black History Month, but it kind of brings things into perspective, really, the journey itself, and how I got where I am today. So it's very exciting for me to be here and share a little bit, not only the journey, but the book itself.
I'm looking forward to it, man. Just kind of jump you in and get you started, man. Tell everybody a little bit about yourself, man, your journey, man. Journalism, this is a different line right here, And I actually, the guy that you just had on, man, my publicist, he's a journalist. I want to give everybody, if this was a career that somebody was thinking about going into, I definitely want to get them educated on some things that, you had to go through in your journey that could be beneficial.
Well, I will tell you, here's the funny thing. When I was in high school, I grew up in a little small town in Oklahoma, Lawton, Oklahoma. And we were in high school. And since I was a boy, everyone in my family will tell you, what did he want to do when he grew up? They would have said he wanted to be a lawyer. That was my dream. I wanted to be a lawyer. And I was going to school, high school, and they made us do these assessment tests. I had some people come in and we had to do these assessment tests. And so when it was time for me to go and look at my test, they told me that they asked what I wanted to do. I said I wanted to be a lawyer. And the gentleman told me at that point that he didn't think that would be a good idea, that I probably needed to look at some other career field. And I said, like what? Like the service industry, maybe be a sanitation worker. And man, that lit me up. I was pissed. I'm like, and fortunately, growing up, I had strong individuals who, made me believe in myself. And I was like, you know what, this dude's not going to shape me or tell me what I can do. And so I went to school and majored in criminal justice. But while I was going to school, it's the age-old thing. There was a cute girl that I knew, and I wanted to take her out, and she just happened to be working at the TV station. So though I was majoring in criminal justice, I went to ask her out at the TV station and wound up getting a job there. And I started my career in television and journalism at 19. So I always tell people that, if I got fired, I wouldn't know what to do, because this has been my career since I was 19 years old.
Oh, wow. Man, that's an interesting journey right there. Definitely the start of it for sure. Yeah. And actually, man, a common theme on the platform, man, really chasing your dreams, man, is definitely about, having that dream aspiration that you probably had to chase and definitely had to overcome some adversity. So you got a common theme into how it actually started for you.
Right. The reason I wanted to be a lawyer, I was when I was 4, My uncle had went to Vietnam and came back, and he became a social activist and civil rights leader in our hometown, Lafayette, Louisiana. And the police came and arrested him. And I didn't understand. And I was like, we got to help. We got to help. And I remember my great aunt saying, hey, look, we're going to have to go down and get a lawyer. And I was like, well, what do they do? Well, they help people who are in trouble. And that was my pursuit. I wanted to be that person. I wanted to be a defense attorney. I wanted to help people who needed help. It just turned into that my career field now as a journalist, that's what we do. One of the tenets of journalism is, to be a voice for the voiceless, to speak truth to power. And so I'm able to do what my initial intent was, just in a different field.
Absolutely. And the transition into this field, man, what did it lead to, man? Did you end up what route did you ultimately take?
Well, it was funny. When I took the first job in television, it was really, I was working part-time as a studio camera operator. I ran those big old cameras in the studio. And a couple of weeks after I started, I was told that I should look at being a photographer. And I was like, okay, what do they do? And it just so happened, when you talk about a journey and you talk about truly being blessed, if you step back and you count the things that happen in your life, that there's divine intervention. The chief photographer for the TV station lived 2 streets over from where I grew up. My parents lived. So he knew me from being a little kid in the street, running around and playing. And so he took me under his wing and he taught me how to shoot a camera. They taught me how to edit videotape. And so I transitioned into becoming a photographer. And then later on, I got a job as a photographer, and it just so happened, like most companies or some companies, I went in I left work on a Friday and we had 27 people in the newsroom. I came back on Monday and we had 10. And so it was like, hey, guess what? You're going to be a reporter. And I was like, oh, what? You're going to be a reporter now. And I wound up, I started reporting, and consequently, I did the weekend weather. They taught me how to do weather. So I did a little bit of both. I wasn't big on being on air. I love being a photographer. I love going out, taking pictures. I love creating something that wasn't there. Without television reporting, without the visuals is radio. It's just audio. And so that was very fulfilling to me, to be creative and come up with, how to tell this story from a visual standpoint. And I was pretty good at it. And so I went back into that part of the business of being a photographer. And several years down the road, I got more into producing pieces where I was still shooting and going out and taking pictures, but then I was part of a special projects unit, and I started writing stories, and I started producing the stories that I was writing. So coming up with the ideas, working through them, editing, copy editing, doing all of that. So I worked on that end, and then I transitioned into management. I became a news operations manager. So I ran the logistical part of the newsroom. I was over the photographers and computers and making sure everything in the newsroom ran. And then transitioned more into the full editorial side as an assistant news director, running the day-to-day operations of a newsroom. Then becoming a news director and have a cool newsroom to run, and did that, and then transitioned from there to my current position, where now I oversee 12 television markets in 5 states. And so I have a total of 21 news operations underneath me that I oversee.
Wow. So, man, honestly, man, I'm interested in everything, man. Anytime you hear the word first on anything, I don't care what it is, football, basketball, becoming the first of anything, it's a journey where, man, you kind of learn a lot on your own as you go, right? Just being the first one in my family go to college, you kind of the first one to start to kind of lay that foundation. And then, of course, you start to want to look at yourself as the whole, not just the first to do anything, but as you're competitive with every race to versus anybody out there, you can do the job amongst anybody. But how was that journey of like, what did you have to do to stay focused and driven and motivated to believe that could happen for you?
Well, I'm kind of a knucklehead in some regards. I'm always thinking I can do it better than the other person. And so when I was a photographer at a station, I was always complaining, man, that news director don't know what they're doing. They sit in that office all day. I know, because I'm out here in the streets. I'm talking to the people. I know. Needless to say, there was a whole lot I didn't know and had to learn. But the reality is once I started moving into the management track, I knew that at some point I wanted to become a news director. And so that kept me focused and motivated on just becoming a news director and having my own newsroom, so that I could set things in motion. Let's be honest, a lot of things, especially, mid 90s or so, late 80s, mid 90s, all you saw on TV when it came to us was us in handcuffs. And, there were interviews and weren't people that looked like us. I wanted to make sure that if we needed an expert, we can go talk to a Black doctor. But there's Black businesses out there. There's Hispanic businesses, Native American businesses, doctors, lawyers, experts in the field. And so I wanted to make sure that we were inclusive in what we were doing coverage-wise in the community. So that kept me focused to become a news director. The whole thing, I'll be honest with you, when I went to Oklahoma City, I was excited about getting the job. One, because as a young kid, I grew up watching that television station. So I was basically going to go run a station that I grew up watching. And at the time, my oldest son was 12, and he was sitting down on a bed and he was crying. And I asked, because he had to finish school before, I left, and he had to finish school before he could come. And I was talking to him about that. And he's the one that told me, he said, Dad, I'm proud of you. And I said, well, I appreciate that, son. And he said, you're going to be the first Black news director in Oklahoma City. And I was like, what? He had Googled and looked it up. And it was my 12-year-old that told me. And it was like, whoa.
Wow.
And so it hit me at that point. And so when I got there, it was about the understanding that there was going to be a lot of eyeballs on me. It was the 45th largest television market. So getting your first news director's job in that large of a market is kind of almost unheard of. Not saying that it couldn't happen, but that was a rarity for anybody, a really rarity for a person of color. And so I knew there was going to be eyeballs. There were going to be questions and some challenges to what we were doing in the newsroom. I didn't really feel pressure until, probably about, and look, there were questions. I mean, even internally, whether I had the fortitude to do it and knew what I was doing, and I had to prove that internally. Once I did that, it was from an external standpoint. But my second year in Oklahoma City, I won a very prestigious award. Only one person in the media is awarded this award. It's there's a cornerstone. I can't remember the whole name of it now, but the thing of it is, no matter radio, magazine, television, newspaper, only one person in the media wins this award every year. It's given out by the Secretary of Commerce and the president. And so it was a big deal. You fly to Washington, D.C., wear your tuxedo and have a big presentation. It wasn't until after that that people started to go, who is this guy? What is he about? And then you got a lot of the scrutiny. The other thing, though, that happened, which was truly a blessing, our television station was really good. Over a 6-year period, our 10 o'clock newscast finished number one in the country.
Oh, wow.
We were better than New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, you name it. We had the number one station in the country in late news. We did that 8 times in 6 years. And so, there was a lot of chatter, but it was good. I mean, I enjoyed it. And I faced some racism again right there in the station because of the success we had. And I don't take all the credit. I had really good people working with me, and that was the whole point. Our newsroom was a collective of everyone. You name it, we had it in our newsroom. And everybody had a voice. And really, truthfully, if you're going to be successful in journalism, that's what it's about. It's not one voice or one view. It's a diverse voice. And diverse doesn't mean just color. Diverse means what it really means.
So, man, that's a lot. They just kind of listen, take in, as you was talking, man, something came to mind as you alluded to some of, the criticism that came along and even some of the racism. Like, if you could just pick out one thing, what was like the biggest challenge you had to overcome?
I had probably a situation where there was success at that station before I got there. That person did not like the success that was happening within the news department, and there was a lot of challenges. That person had went to the owner and said, hey, this was 2007. It was like, I don't want that N word. You either get rid of him or you got to let me go, because I used to be this station. And so I was fortunate that the station backed me because the success that came, it was from building coalitions within that newsroom. And we didn't have dysfunction. And then on top of that, obviously the success we were having, it was hard to just go, hey, we're gonna dump this dude because, so that was a challenge, and it was tough. And, I'm skimming the surface of it, it got deeper and deeper.
For sure.
And, and they made it, it was hard, and you had to work around the issues, but, I try to tell everybody things are, for kids today, a lot of times, we've told them, hey, you go to school, get good grades, go to college, you're going to get a good job. And we don't tell them there's a lot of adversity out there, and you have to work through the adversity. They are willing to just quit. It's tough. It bothered me. And you can't do that. You got to face the adversity. It's going to make you stronger. And really, it's not about, trying to think how to put this, but it's really more about your reaction to what happens. For the most part, if you find that you don't react, you're better off than trying to react, because you're fighting a battle that somebody's pulling you into instead of you leading the battle. You got to learn to control yourself and don't let anyone else control you. So.
Absolutely. And I mean, adversity definitely comes, man. I'm a prime component. I always talk about it. Like, you got to be able to overcome it to achieve success. And a lot of times that take contingency planning, man. Until you interview somebody on here, man, like, you kind of get a good feel, man. I can tell, I enjoy how humble you are, man, because you mentioned something, man, and you just like being number one, not only being number one in Oklahoma, the bigger markets that you were competing against, to be number one in that smaller market in comparison to some of the bigger markets, that is huge, man. That's kudos to your team, not trying to take all the credit, praising them. And, people sometimes don't see the other people that put work in behind the scenes. That's the truth. But in doing that, man, like, how do you stay on top for so long? Like, what is that like? How do you have to compete against those bigger networks? Probably have some of the resources that they have, right? Like, if you're keeping it real, you probably don't have all the things that they have, but somehow you're making it work with what you have. How is that making that feel?
The reality is to talk to the team about, it's not about what we don't have, it's about what we do have. And then how do we maximize it? And you know what? We're just as good. When I was in a small market, I was in Amarillo, Texas, and I got the phone calls like being in the baseball, you got triple A, double A, and A. I was at the A team.
Okay.
And I got the call to go to Houston. And so that was like going to AT to major leagues, And when I got the call, I remember going to visit one of the other stations I worked at, small market, and I was talking to the chief engineer, and he was this old curmudgeon dude, complained about everything. And we were talking, and he said, "So I heard you going to Houston." And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Man, you made it to the big time." I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "I'm a little nervous." And he goes, "Well, what the hell for?" And I said, "Well, those guys, that's top 10 market. They got a lot of experience. I'm still young. I haven't learned a lot." And he said, "Son, they called you." Realize they called you. So you must know what you're doing. And he said, the other thing to keep in mind is them fools put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. So ain't no issues. And that kind of stuck with me, that, it doesn't matter what anybody has, work with what you got and maximize what you got, and you'll be surprised just how good you can be. So, and I try to keep the teams focused on that. And we did. I mean, we never, if Dallas or some big market was doing, yeah, well, we can do it better. We'll find a way to make it happen. And we did. So I was excited.
Absolutely. The results definitely spoke for themselves, man. And, giving you a moment to really just kind of even reflect again on that piece, man, that you talked about, man, when the show really backed you, man, to realize that you had that support. What did it do for you, man? What did it do for your confidence?
It gave me a lot of confidence to really believe that, okay, look, I'm proving my value and my worth. And by doing that, it invigorated me to motivate and push the team to do better and to go further than we had gone. And we were able to accomplish that. And I was actually rewarded to this when, the big switch from linear broadcasting into social and digital was really happening. that company actually promoted me to run the websites. We had 2 television stations within our group. And so I oversaw the content for both of those TV stations. And so that was really, that was a blessing, because that led to me going to Kansas City for all the things that company was trying to do. They wanted and needed someone who understood, not only the television linear side, but the digital side, and to grow what they were doing there. So, again, staying focused. And again, it's not about, it's all about your reaction. When all the negative stuff happened, I continued to stay positive and focus on what I could control and not what I couldn't.
Absolutely, man. And, definitely focusing on those things you could, man, and get great results, man, because you already know putting that energy in those things we can't. Normally, we just falling flat on our face, and especially with it being February, Stress Awareness Month, I guess that's a good plug as well. And just being aware, and, me being a mental health counselor, some of the things and pressures that come along with that. But, man, so much stands out, just talking to you, man. But the undertone of not always knowing who looking, right? It's interesting that you found that out from your 12-year-old son. What was it? You just never know, right? Like, did you have any mentors that you was looking up to, or guidance in the field, or people that was able to help pull you along as well?
Yeah, there were some people at that time that I really looked up to, and I their guidance was very important. But it was, my son, and it took it to another level that it came from him, because now I have that responsibility as a Black man to make sure my son sees me in the light that's positive, that's doing something, so that he has that same opportunity to grow. And it really hit home. And it was funny because he pretty much grew up living in a news. I'm surprised he didn't get into this business because he grew up in a newsroom, and when he was 12 years old, we had disaster, tornadoes, and he was in there working. He was on the computer doing things. So, but that made it very special that it was him that pointed it out. And, for me, it was an extra motivation to succeed, and understand that others would be looking. And that was very, very important to me, to make sure that I did succeed so that others could have that same opportunity. And it was funny because there was a gentleman that came and interviewed with me early on in my tenure there. And for circumstances, it just didn't work out. African-American guy. Well, after I left, not at the same station, but he became the second African-American news director in Oklahoma City, a couple of years after I left. So, knowing that you paved the way for others is important.
Man, that's, just so interesting, man. Definitely blazing that trail. Others get opportunities because you do right by the opportunity, man. I commend you on that journey, man. And then, man, get the information, get a chance to read up on you, man. Definitely when you just hear the word forgiveness in anybody article, they can be about many different things, right?
Right.
And, I look at this book title, right? Like I just look down, The Blessing of Forgiveness, right? Like The Blessing of Forgiveness, the Healing Journal.
Mm-hmm.
What's in the book? What are we talking about? Like, what are we getting out? What's your message, man?
The message really is about forgiveness. It's about understanding kind of what I've said. It's been funny. It's been a whole part of my life, but it wasn't until later that I realized it's really how you control what you can control and let everything else go. And when you let everything else go, those things that you were harboring, there's a weight that's lifted, and you can focus on the things that help you move forward and not continue to hold you back. So the book itself, it is a journey into my life. It was funny. My mom read the book before I had it printed or put to publish, and she was shocked because she said, that's not what I expected it to be, because she thought just recently, last year, I was elected into the Oklahoma Journalism Hall of Fame. And so she really thought it was going to be a journey of my career and not our life. And so it wasn't a shock. She took an emotional step back and she said, son, this is really good. And I have a little bit of an interesting history, but the reality is that history, for a lot of African Americans, in some way, shape, and form, they can relate to it, because either they've been associated or somebody they know has been associated. And just there's other things in life that people can relate to. I've had people email me who've read the book and said, dude, you just don't know, man. When you talked about this, it really touched me because that happened in my life. I just had a lady text me this weekend and said, oh my God, I lived exactly what you live, and I know that very well. Part of what the book is about is it centers around the paper bag principle. And I don't know if you know what that is.
Hey, absolutely. I'm an Omega man. I better know something about the paper bag. Yeah, absolutely.
So, in the South, blacks discriminated against other blacks based on the fact if you were darker than a paper bag, then you couldn't associate certain folks. And so the crazy thing was I was a product and born out of the paper bag principle. My father and my mother fell in love when my mother was a senior in high school, and they wanted to get married, and my father's family wouldn't allow it. He was very light-skinned. I mean, my whole family, I have pictures in the book, and if you saw it, you go, damn, those people are white.
I'm going to get a copy so I can see. I'm going to get a copy.
So, they decided that they wouldn't allow this to happen. So my father and mother decided to get pregnant. They wound up having me. And then my mother's family, my grandparents had died. So my mom was being raised by a great aunt and a great aunt. They were like, look, she wasn't good enough for y'all. We're going to raise her and the baby. We'll take care of them. And there was a lot of stress that was caused. And at some point, the families decided that we would not know, they would make sure that I would never know I was part of this other family. Consequently, my mother married, my father married, my father had a daughter. It was very stressful on him. He committed suicide. And the families formed a pact that us as children, my sister, and myself, we would never know each other. We would never know about each other. They decided this on their own, and that was that. And it was crazy because they kept the secret on both sides. Even though our cousins knew, other family members knew, no one spoke a word of it. I had family members kids that I would play with, that I never knew was my cousins. We would go to this old lady's house, and there would be pictures of me. I did not know that was my grandmother as a child. And so I grew up, and my stepdad and I, we didn't get along very well. When I was 18, this is when my mom finally told me what had happened. So that was the first time I found out my dad, who I thought was my dad, was not my dad.
Wow.
And that I had a sister I didn't know about, and I had a whole family I didn't know about. So I kind of chronicle all of that, and then the journey afterwards. The crazy thing is that the relationships were destroyed at that point with my parents. It was really, and I went down a dark path. I met my sister, and both of us had struggled dealing with it. We both, in our own right or time passage, we tried to commit suicide. So I'm having success on one side and trying to kill myself on the other side.
Wow.
It was tough. But slowly but surely, God intervened and put things together for both of us, to the point I was able to reconcile with my mom, my stepdad. But where the true blessing is that the lady that my father married, my mom, my sister's mom, and my mom wound up becoming good friends. When my parents traveled to Louisiana, that's where they stay, is with her. Her mom, we're one family now. So out of something that could have been horrible, where I would never known I had a sister or whatever, and, the families, I got to understand and know my real dad's family. It made me closer to my stepdad's family, but as a whole, my immediate family, we truly became one. And it's amazing. But it was through that, really, we got to see all of us, understand that there's one real true Father, and that's God himself. And so I was really, that's what the book is about. It's about finding your true Father.
Absolutely. What a great story, man. I'm glad you actually shared that on the platform, right? Like, I didn't even know you was about to even give me all that today, but man, what a journey, man. Me being who I am, that's definitely a plug, because it could be somebody listening that feel hopeless, helpless, even starting to isolate themselves, man. Like, that suicidal ideation is something that's real, man. It grabs you, man. And sometimes you just feel like it ain't no way out other than that. And, you right now, you a testimony, on here showing that. I always try to educate my clients on working with them like this, give ourselves a chance, because I educate like, look, if it's really the lower low, like we really believe this is the worst it can get, I want you to believe ain't nowhere we can go but up from here, right? Like, let's just see if we can do something different, right? Like, let's just change something, Right. So I really educate on the symptoms and what it do to you, how it make you feel, and some things we can do to just start to change the channel, man. And, I use stories like what you just mentioned. Like, there's many success stories if you ultimately get on the other side, because, man, just the fact that, ultimately, I guess I can get an education piece. If you pay attention in families in general where suicide is taking place, normally there's been other attempts or even completions of suicide. Like, the data shows that, like, statistics show that. So when you start to really talk about using like evidence-based practices in the field, like cognitive behavior therapy, whatever the case may be, when you start to really work on suicidal ideation and trying to get somebody to see something from a different perspective, you realistically using all the data to show them like, yeah, just as many people have been through this. You can find success stories of people that came out on the other side. The problem is people just don't always share their story, man. So that's why it's even huge that you put this in your book and actually sharing this information, because, man, heart to heart, I appreciate it more than you'll ever know, because people can definitely learn from that. And the bigger takeaway, finding your true father, God is pretty much what you're referencing, but you was able to pull that family together. Guess what, man? It might have never got pulled together. This is the even bigger testimony. Like, who knows how many more years or how many generations something like this could have affected your family, man. Like, you talking about cousins that would continue to know each other. They wouldn't know each other.
Right.
Aunts, uncles, and it leaves too much room for error. You already know that. Man, I appreciate you sharing that more than you ever know, for real.
Oh, well, I'm glad to share. And that was part of what I was saying earlier is, the idea of the book stemmed from what happened as the paperback principle, but there's other aspects, I think, in my life that other people can relate to beyond just the paperback principle, that, we've faced a lot of different things. It's like I was saying, one gentleman was telling me, hey, I laid in bed at night many times thinking about taking my life, but hearing your story lets me know that there is something for me. I just got to keep focusing. So, that one particular kind, it touched me deeply, because that's what I hoped would happen, is that somebody or people would say, oh, that's me. And wow, I can overcome. So I'm really sharing the stories. It was tough. It took me a long time to get in a position to be able to share. But once I was able to, I'm glad that it happened, and I look back, I was laughing because my sister, she was gung ho. Dude, you got to do this. You got to do this. And my little brother, he was, hey, man, this is all the truth. Just speak the truth. Just do it. So it was good to have family encouragement, to be there and support me too. So.
Absolutely. And, man, it also provides another lane to continue the healing, right?
Yeah.
Because I pride myself on being really educating. Sometimes the healing process is a lifelong journey, man. There's been people that's died and went on and haven't healed from things that happened to them here on earth. Right. But ultimately, the goal is not to let those traumas and things hold us down to the point that we still can't definitely achieve success, right? Like, I want my people, I want you to live, right? Like, not just exist. Like, really try to, maximize your time here. And, at the end of the day, we all get one chance around down here for sure. Right. And, all of us, the reason I started the podcast, the whole premise behind it was to just show everybody, like, it's funny. You mentioned how successful you were on one end, and then on the other end, you were still having these issues, right? Like, you can look at people and not really know what they're going through. And there's people out here, like almost anybody out here in the world. Everybody has downs. Everybody gets sad. Everybody gets upset. Everybody has their own triggers. But sometimes people just don't know that, and they start to believe they're the only one, because when you're depressed, it makes you feel like that. Even worse, if you're like an anxious person, you get that trigger to what? Danger to your mind, right? You start to think the worst possible outcomes that can happen, and you realistically feel like it's going to happen, And
you bring up a good point when you talk about triggers. One of the things, I found was that depression ran in my family on my real dad's side. And it wasn't just depression. That depression led to other things, using drugs or alcohol to try and cope with the feelings. And, I went down that road too, where I was in college and I was drinking heavily. I rode around with an ice chest in the trunk of the car. It was crazy. But it's something that, a lot of people don't talk about. They don't fully understand. And you know, understanding that depression could be very mild or it could be, you know,
moderate us a bit.
yeah. And so understanding that and then understanding the triggers. I suffer from depression. And so, but I know and I can feel when the triggers are happening. So I try to take myself to another place so that I'm not dealing with whatever emotions that come up. And so, and you know, in our community you know, there is some, you know, you ain't man enough, you know, to express yourself, and we need to get over those things, and we need to be able to understand what those triggers are, when they're happening, you know, and work to get help. You know, I wonder, and here's the other thing, you don't understand what it does to other people. And in the book, I really talk about, you know, it affected obviously me and my sister, but the person that probably was most affected was my godfather, because it led him, he was the last person to see my father alive, and they were very close. And it led him to 10 years of drinking and drugs, and his whole life it took him forever to get out of that spiral. So we don't understand how what we're going through affects others, you know, and the things that, so getting the help not only helps ourselves, but it helps other people around us too. And so it's important to talk about, it's important to have that message and know that it's okay to seek help. Because I wonder, you know, what happens, you know, what could have happened, you know, with my father if he did have help.
Absolutely, man. And, you know, I'm a prime component of that, man, because I often just educate on that, man, because, you know, the stereotypes is crazy, man, the graphs that, you know, it causes people to run away from help, man. And strategically, I did something, man. I actually spoke, you know, I had a presentation at the Chambers of Commerce, man, and I kind of spoke on some different things, but in the room, man, because I didn't imagine that it was going to be that many people. So I did something strategic in there. I said, listen, if I gave everybody in here $100, would y'all take it across the room? Yeah. I said, well, imagine if I took that $100 bills I just gave you and told you the person right next to you could turn into $10,000. Would you ask for help? Across the room, yeah. I said, well, then lies the problem. Most of the time, the help just ain't that evident, but you're making probably way more than that if it puts you on the right track to achieve what you're trying to work towards, right? And, you know, after that, man, you know, seeing the guys come up to me, even some of the ladies, they asking me, they like, yo, nobody's ever really broken it down like that. And I'm like, listen, man, like, you cheat yourself out of something. Like, you prevent yourself from wanting to get, you know, what that more could be because you're still in that same place. And then, you know, another takeaway when you talk about, like, you know, the substance use, basically the self-medicate when you're going through those things. Sometimes you don't even realize, like, you know, like alcohol, it's a depressant, right? It only puts you even in a darker place, but you feel like it's helping you, but it's putting you in a darker place. It's depressing. Like, that's what it does to you, right? And, you know, trying to help pull people out of that, you know, is like that constant messaging. Let's get the help. Like, work with me. Help, let's get this message out because all of us need help. It's just people need help in different ways. Exactly. So frown upon the next person will get help this way, but now you need help this way. Like, I'll never understand that. And I appreciate you, man, more than you'll ever know, man, because who knew you would cross over into all these lanes, man? But it is a great story, man. I look forward to reading the book. And I'm sure my followers on here, man, they're gonna support you really well, man, and try to get something out of it too.
Well, I you know, I hope your supporters grab the book, and I hope they enjoy reading it. And like I said, there's probably takeaways in the book that will relate to them. And so that's been the message and the feedback that I've gotten, is that many people have been touched on different levels because the book does relate to them. It's my journey, but it's a little bit of everybody's journey.
Yep, we get to go on it with you. That's a great book. And look, it's not like we get to go on that journey with you. You know, That's going to be an exciting thing, man, you know, especially having you given a chance to ultimately hear a lot about it. Is there anything else you want people to know about what's in there, even about your journey, anything that you want to, you know, lead the people with?
Just, the biggest thing is we have one Father who's a creator of heaven and earth and all things, and stay focused on Him. And if we do that, He'll clear the path. And again, things will be clearer if we stay focused on Him.
Okay. And then, man, you know, the last message kind of that pretty much I ask every guest because I want to know, and I like for our people to be able to support you on that journey as well, man. What's next for you, man? Like, yeah, I know you got your book out now. What's going to be the next thing you chasing or going out?
You know, I don't know just yet. To be quite honest, I wrote a children's book when I was 19, and I never published it. So I'm considering to go ahead and publish that book. I actually have a screenplay in my head. I may work to start developing that. But I enjoy what I do. I'm a journalist at heart, and I love teaching. I love growing, and in the capacity that I'm in now, that's what I get to do. I get to mentor a lot of young journalists coming into the business. And so I want to be able to continue to do that until, I decide it's time to move on. So.
Absolutely, man. Well, I definitely want to give you your flowers, man. I commend you for your journey. You know, your journey, man, you know, it's one journey that could touch many, man. And, I always say, if you can only touch one, it was well worth, whatever we got to do to make it happen, man. You know, who knew, like I said, because I really didn't, man, you got a huge story, man. I'm going to be bothering you after this to pick that brain even some more, man. But I mean, honest and truthfully, man, this is my chance to tell you, man, I'm definitely thankful that, I was the one that got a chance to interview you here. And, anything I can do, man, kind of like I told you off the camera to help you grow, do support, do speak, whatever, you let me know, man. I believe in, definitely repaying the favor, in any way that I possibly can. And, man, I'm looking forward to what's going to be next, man. Since you don't know, I'm going to pay attention myself because it might be that children's book. And I definitely got children.
Well, good deal. Well, again, I can't thank you enough for allowing me the opportunity to come on the podcast and share my story and my journey with you as well as your followers. And again, I hope the followers got a little something out of the conversation, and I hope that they get the book and enjoy the read.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Anybody you want to thank anything before I wrap up?
Oh, my wife, it's her birthday tomorrow.
Oh, wife, yes. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy early birthday for sure. Thank you for letting me come on. Let me tell happy birthday. I appreciate it.
So definitely want to thank her and for all her support and encouragement, my parents, and I want to thank Cedric Fisher Company and Publishers. They've been a great partner in helping me work on developing a story and publishing the book.
Absolutely, man. Thanks to everybody that he just shouted out, for being instrumental in his journey. This is, the end of today's episode of the Chasing Your Dreams podcast. Again, see you next week.